I'm going to explain in this video how sometimes even one good egg just cannot help a sour barrel of apples. I don't think that's the saying. Hi everyone, I am Brittany, the Cosmic Lunar Soul. Welcome to my channel. If you're new, welcome back to all of my subscribers. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different where I do a bit of a wine with me series. So if you are over your local drinking age, make sure you have a glass of wine or whatever beverage of choice, and we can wine about some of the toxicity in the spiritual community. All right, let's talk about it. All right, so I know the title and the thumbnail are a little much, but I really do think that this is true. Like, if you are in a toxic spiritual community, it could really and truly be killing your practice, in my opinion. So let me tell you a little bit of a story, and we'll kind of weave this throughout some of the points that I want to make. I recently left this toxic community on Amino, but any community can be toxic. I have seen them on Facebook. I've seen them especially on Reddit. And then, of course, Amino, Instagram, whatever. Wherever there can be community, it can become toxic or is already toxic and you don't realize it. So I was in this tarot community and I was aware of a few of the red flags, but I brushed it off because, well, one, I'm not new, so I kind of know how to navigate around red flags. And two, I felt that if there were these red flags, I should be a green flag to kind of counteract some of that. But I'm going to explain in this video how sometimes even one good egg just cannot help a sour barrel of apples. I don't think that's the saying. Okay. So, I'm in this community, and the biggest red flag that you can get from any community is if the leaders themselves give off a bad vibe. And when I say bad vibe, I don't mean just like, oh, you know, we don't agree on the same kinds of things, or like we have different interests or stuff like that. That's not a bad vibe. That's just human nature. People have different opinions and different things that make them happy. When I say bad vibe, I mean actually coming off as authoritative. So there's a difference between being an authority and being authoritative. And I think a lot of people, especially newbies, sometimes don't see that nuance there. Someone who is an authority will usually speak from conviction, but they are not putting other people down when they do it. So in this community that I was in, and I'll use this community as an example. So the person had been reading tarot for a long time, and a lot of times when people have been reading for a good amount of years and upward, they can speak from a place of authority in the sense that they have done a lot of research, they've interacted with people from varying backgrounds, varying preferences, they've seen different styles of readings, and they can help people even if that person doesn't necessarily read in the same style that they do, but they can give them tips and different examples that the person, especially a newbie, can take away and discern for themselves. In this community, what was actually happening was the leader said that their way of tarot was the only way to read, and any other way was scamming. That meant that you had to, and these are some of the red flags, guys. One of the big ones was if you weren't a hereditary reader, meaning you didn't learn from other readers in your like line or in your like close family circle. Huge red flag across the entire spiritual community. There's no such thing. Well, I won't say there's no such thing. Learning from people in your family or, you know, people close to your family or whatever is a huge privilege that a lot of people simply do not have. So there's a level of self-awareness and you understand that people have to learn from each other, usually online at this point. Sometimes from other new readers, people learn together. And a lot of times it just boils down to learning from your specific resources and experience. So, what wasn't happening was that explanation. Instead, what was happening was telling newbies that they are never going to be a good reader because they don't have that familiar line that teaches them. Huge red flag, guys. So sorry, Luna had to join us in the Wine About It session. So basically, if a leader has to put others down in order to raise themselves up to a place of authority or perceived authority, that is a very huge red flag, and you guys should probably run for the hills. So this transitions very seamlessly into the next thing, where I started with the leaders first because the leaders set the precedence for a community. A lot of times in communities, you're always going to have the bad eggs. Every once in a while, you just have people that are just off the freaking chain. But there is usually a good moderation system that corrects that. But when it's coming from the leaders and trickling down, it just facilitates a toxic community from the top. But let's talk about the next transition into some big red flags is if they say that only their way is right and any other way is wrong. So in the spiritual community, in tarot, in a lot of different things, there are so many different varieties of ways to do things, and a lot of them can be based off of your experiences, your culture, a lot of stuff, you know? And with tarot specifically, yeah, tarot has three main big systems that have set meanings, but then and when you are a good reader, you learn to intuitively discern what to pull out of the cards and what necessarily doesn't. Well, according to this one community that I was in, if you don't read a specific system of tarot, then you're basically reading oracle and you don't count as a tarot reader. So this is another red flag, guys. You should not feel like anyone is putting down or disregarding or invalidating your method of learning. So, and here's the difference, right? So, I think people confuse correction with invalidating, but they're different, and I'll show you how. So, for instance, I have a lot of new readers who don't understand that there are differences there are different systems of tarot, and sometimes they'll come in with a specific deck and they want to learn a certain way. We're not telling them they can't do that, but a lot of times they don't realize. So what we're doing is correcting, and we say, hey, this is a Marseille deck, so you might want to use these resources. And if you don't like those resources, you can read them the popular way, which is this way. And then if you happen to not like those, you have this other resource as well. And some people end up kind of combining and merging and meshing. Some will just stick to the system that their cards are based off of. But it gives the control and the power to that person. You're just giving them the understanding, the knowledge, so they know what they're looking for, and that way they can go off and do their own actual research, come to their own conclusions, and then come back and discuss it. Instead, what was happening was that this is the only way. If you do it any other way, then you're not reading tarot. And you have to imagine, as someone who's new to tarot, this sounds very scary, and it sounds like immediately they're doing something wrong, and that the only way to correct it is to do it this one specific way that they happen to just not really connect with. And that keeps people from going forward in their practice because they feel like that practice isn't for them. You also have to wonder, how are people responding to opposing opinions? And when I say opposing opinions, I don't mean saying like, oh, the sky is green. There's still facts and logic in the world. But if so I personally don't really like Marseille style tarot, for instance. And I also, if you saw my Don't Call Me a Pagan video, I also don't consider myself pagan, and I don't like to be called pagan. But there are plenty of people that do. And I would never fault them for that. And I would never, chastise them for that. There's, certain things that are up to them to decide for themselves how they're going to make their practice look. And that's okay. Now, on the flip side, if I were to say, like, oh, you're a pagan, that's so stupid. Why would you ever want to do that? That's crazy. Like, over here, we're only witches, like non-pagan witches. And if you want to do that, you can leave. That is a toxic community. I mean, it's a little bit extreme, but you kind of get the gist. And I have seen this, and so I've been giving a lot of examples from this tarot community that I was in, but I'm also in this hoodoo community that I'm still in it, and I'm very aware that it's toxic, guys. Don't come for me, but they have good resources. It's just the people themselves are a nightmare. So, so I choose to just join the community, silently read through the resources, and never talk to the people, which you can also do. But if you post questions and the responses are just to make fun of you instead of leading you into asking maybe the question that you should have been asking, or maybe filling in why. I mean, and then some people just ask silly questions. It is what it is. I've asked silly questions, but explain why it's silly. Just don't tell them that they're being silly, So, for example, let's talk about hoodoo for instance. And someone asks about wanting to do a spell that kind of rides the line of like hoodoo and like traditional European witchcraft, right? The response shouldn't be like, oh, your ancestors would be ashamed of you. That's not productive. It's not constructive, and ultimately makes people feel alienated. So if you notice that you're asking questions and people are just responding to make fun of you, then you should, or the responses are always in this line and the people are not being corrected. That's a very big thing. If they're not being corrected, then perhaps it's not the right community for you. And ultimately, why would you want to be in a community where you feel like you can't ask any questions? Even though I know that I am. Don't come for me, guys. So I think a lot of things that come to mind when I'm talking about toxic communities are, things like power, wanting to dominate people, wanting to subjugate people, where you feel like I guess I should do it the other way, where those people want to make themselves feel superior and you feel inferior. It's a way of basically othering people and also making them feel like they have some sort of power and control over you in some kind of way. Now, you might be wondering, okay, Britt, what is with the rant? What's going on? How does this help me? I want to tell you all of this because I've seen it happen, and I've been in communities long enough where I can either decide I'm going to navigate it around and I know what I'm looking for and I go for it, or I decide that there's nothing that I can do to make this community better, so it's just not good for my mental health. I've seen so many new people to the craft and to tarot and just to stuff that end up really stagnant because one, they're too reliant on people, and that's a video for a whole nother time. If you guys want me to talk about that, I can, about the over reliance of people in the witchcraft and tarot communities. But the other thing is that they're never led anywhere other than a dead end. So if and let me round this all out for you. If you're always if you're asking questions and they are always just basically responding in a way that ridicules you, you're not getting answers, right? So you're always going to have those questions. And then if you're in a discussion and trying to learn about a different practice, or whether it be witchcraft or divination, and they say the only way that you can be good or proficient in this is if you are more or less have this resource that 95% of the people in the world don't have, i.e., hereditary knowledge, then you're going to feel like, what's the point? And then on top of that, if people say that if you read this specific style, or if you do this style of witchcraft, you are a scammer, or you are a fake, or any kind of adjective like that, you're going to feel really self-conscious about the things that make you happy and that the drew you into that practice to begin with. So you're not going to put a lot of effort into that, because now in your brain you're thinking, oh, I'm doing this wrong and people are recognizing me doing this wrong and they're going to call me out for it, when that's not the truth. It's just you happen to be around manipulative people who want to feel powerful, and they really aren't. So I think that if I would leave you guys with any suggestions, I would say that, some places have really great resources. If they have good like files and links and stuff like that, just be a fly on the wall. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't interact with people, and that's totally okay. You don't have to interact in every community that you're in. And then if you're there for more of the social side of things, in very, very large communities, find your little bubble. You will be surprised by the people that gravitate towards you. And then if you are in more of the community that I described in the beginning of this video, where it's really toxic from the top down, then I hope you recognize those red flags before they halt your practice, or before it makes you feel like you are not allowed to even pursue that practice, and you find a better community that don't have those red flags, where you can find your actual community, where you can find people that support or even participate in the practice that you're looking for. So I feel like this video was a little bit of a rant, but I just wanted to point out like some of the red flags that I've been seeing in some of the communities. And after my experience, like finally leaving a toxic community, I hope that I can help people avoid them before they get to the point of joining them and going too far and spending like 6 months there and realizing like, oh, this person is just a monster. So I just, yeah. I just want you guys to get to that point, because once you're in that community, a lot of people that join, it's very hard to pull them out. And if I give you the tools necessary to pull you out before you dive too deep into them, then hopefully that helps you. And yeah. If you guys have had issues with toxic communities and stuff like that, I'd love to hear your stories. Comment below, let me know. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, give me a like, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. And I will see you on the flip side. Bye, guys.